Good morning. There we go. Thank you again and welcome to the Mayor's Annual Prayer Breakfast. My name's John Riddler. I serve as the Executive Director of the Arlington Heights Chamber. We're glad you're here. Good morning again. So could I have you stand, please? What we're going to do this morning, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we are going to have the National Anthem led by the Orchards Bluegrass Praise Band. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose rough stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Please remain standing for our invocation. Deacon Peter LeTourneau from Our Lady of the Wayside Parish. Deacon?
Doesn't the national anthem make you proud to be an American? I always love that. Loving God, bless all of us gathered here today as we come together this year for this year's community prayer breakfast. Despite our differences, you have gathered us around these tables in true peace and community. Thank you for the blessings of each of our unique God-given gifts. Place in our hearts the desire to make a difference in our families and community and the world. Thank you for food in the world where many only know hunger. For our faith in a world where many know fear. For peace in a world where many know hate. For family and friends in a world where many know only loneliness. Please bless our community, our families, this food we have shared, those who have prepared it, those who serve it, and those who have worked to make today the special occasion that it is. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please be seated. At this time, please join me in welcoming to the platform our mayor, Mayor Tom Hayes.
Well, thanks, John. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the 36th Annual Arlington Heights Mayor's Community Prayer Breakfast. Thank you for taking the time to join us again this year to acknowledge the importance and power of prayer in our daily lives. It is our hope once again this year that we have a program that will leave you encouraged, inspired, and equipped to tackle another day that the Lord has made. This is a very exciting but challenging time to be living or working in Arlington Heights, given the focus on our community in the last year and a half as we work with a certain professional football team to redevelop Arlington Park for the benefit of Arlington Heights and really the whole northwest suburban region. So I know that at least I have been looking forward to this morning when we can just sit back, reflect, and give thanks for the many blessings in our lives. For those who attended last spring, we decided to move the breakfast back to its usual place here in the middle of winter. Our prayers were definitely answered this morning because we have a still cold but very decent weather day here today. And I'm very thankful for the 250 attendees that we have gathering with us this morning. We do have a number of very special guests with us today, but just so I don't omit anyone, I'm just going to acknowledge one very special guest, as I always do, my friend and predecessor as mayor, Arlene Mulder. Arlene, if you just stand up. Thanks, Arlene. Arlene, as you know, was mayor of our great community for 20 of the 36 years that we've been doing this breakfast. And so I'm just in my 10th year now. I'm just halfway to you, Arlene. I don't think I'm ever going to catch you. So thank you for all you. I'm catching up to you, Arlene. Well, I have to say, however, that all of you are very special in my mind. And I could not be more grateful to see so many in our community support the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast again now this year in our 36th year, and for what it says about Arlington Heights as a family-oriented community of varied but strong religious faith. I'm also very pleased that the diversity of our community is so well represented here this morning. In particular, I want to welcome our friends of different faiths and backgrounds and thank them for all that they contribute to our diverse and inclusive community, including the Turkish American Society, the Islamic Society of the Northwest Suburbs, the Kyrgyz Community Center, and the Niagara Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the mission of fostering civic conversations and sustained relationships between people of different cultures and faiths. So thank you all for being here today. I want to especially acknowledge and thank the many responsible for the planning and execution of this year's event, including John Riddler and Donna Knudsen from the Chamber of Commerce. Our primary sponsor, again, this year, Lutheran Life Communities, Kevin Corcoran in the back, and Lorelle Communications, the DoubleTree Hotel, again, for hosting the event and providing this great breakfast that we've enjoyed this morning. And especially our dedicated planning committee, led this year again by Chairwoman Crystal Seaford King. With an emphasis, thank you all. With an emphasis on selfless service to others, we are once again blessed to have a wonderful lineup of speakers for you this morning. Regarding our music today, I always look forward to months that have 5 weeks in them because 1, we usually don't have village board meetings those weeks, and 2, the Bluegrass Praise Ensemble is playing on Sunday morning at the Orchard. And so I'm very pleased that they are able to join us this morning. Whether you're a bluegrass fan or not, I know you're in for a real treat. The past 3 years of the COVID-19 pandemic have truly been a reminder that Arlington Heights is blessed to be a community full of good neighbors who give their time and God-given talents to make a positive impact in the lives of others. As the federal and state disaster declarations are soon to be lifted, let us continue to be salt and light in our community. As it says in Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and give light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Again, welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning, and may God richly bless you and your families in 2023. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tom. This morning for our first reading, we have Tammy Motin from the Volunteer of the Arlington Heights American Legion Post. Followed by that will be our second scripture reading by Karen Baker, Executive Director of Community Services and Advocacy at NCH. Tammy?
Okay. The Old Testament of the Holy Scriptures is also called the Tanakh, which means promise to God. It is the sacred literature of Judaism, and it is filled with stories and examples of ethical behavior upon receiving God's laws. In modern times, the verse that I chose to share is a reference to the fact that as Jews, we are commanded to bear responsibility not only for our own moral spirit and material welfare, but also for the welfare of our society at large. We often refer to this as tikkun olam, which means repair the world. We are called upon to do mitzvot, or good deeds, and to give tzedakah, or various forms of charity that help repair and improve the world in some small way. We are taught from an early age to be that light, to try to make a difference every day, and to live by example for the rest of the world. So for that reason, the verse that I chose to share with you is Proverbs chapter 3, verse 27 and 28. Withhold not good from him to whom it is due, when it is in the power of thy hand to do it. Say not unto a neighbor, go and come again, and tomorrow I will give when thou hast it by thee. The other reason I selected this verse is because it parallels my own experience having lived in Arlington Heights for the last year and a half. Arlington Heights truly does provide a sense of place. It is a true community spirit of people coming together to help their neighbors and their community at large in any way that they can. I have been amazed by the outpouring of kindness that I've experienced and that I've been able to share within the community. So may we all be inspired to do tikkun olam and do our part to repair the world and find ways to help our neighbors and our communities. Thank you very much for the absolute honor to be here to share my thoughts with you today.
Good morning, everybody. So I was so honored when I got the call from Mayor Hayes to do this reading, and I just knew immediately I wanted to find a verse that talked about community. My role at Northwest Community Hospital is to provide programs that support people less fortunate, people in need. So I thought it would be perfect to do a verse, centered on community. Since then, unfortunately, the verse about community has become even more meaningful to me. But on a personal level, I lost my eldest son in November, and my family was just amazed by the outpouring of support we got from our community. And it was a community not just of my family and friends, but neighbors, coworkers, strangers just came forward to carry us through this hard time. So that's why I chose a verse on community, and what I selected was Romans 12, verses 9 through 21. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love, honor one another above yourselves. Never lack in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you, and bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, "It is mine to avenge, I will repay," said the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Thank you.
All right, sounds like we're in for a treat. Please join me in welcoming the Orchard Bluegrass Praise Ensemble.
Well, we aim to sing 3 songs with you this morning, and the lyrics are on your table if you'd like to sing along. They should be familiar to you. You're always waiting on the fiddle player. Ready? What a friend. What a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs bear. What a privilege to carry everything God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. Oh, because you do not carry everything God in prayer. Every trials and temptation, trials and trouble and pain. We should never be discouraged. Into the Lord in prayer. And we find a friend so faithful, who will all our sorrows share. Jesus knows our every need. Into the Lord in prayer. Are we weak and heavy laden? Comfort the Lord friend. Precious Savior, still our refuge. Into the Lord in prayer. My friends, despise forsake you. How firm a foundation, ye saints of the Lord, is laid for your faith in His excellent word. What more can He say than to you He has said? To you for refuge, Jesus has fled. Fear not, I am with thee, oh, be not dismayed, for I am thy God, and will still give thee aid. I'll strengthen thee, help thee, cause thee to stand, upheld by my righteous, omnipotent hand. When through fiery trials thy pathway shall lie, the grace of submission shall be thy supply. The flame shall not burn thee, I only design thy cross to consume and thy road to make mine. All right, Tim, you got it. The soul that on Jesus just athlete for repose. I will not desert to his foes. And so, Lord, never to shame. I'll never forsake. And so, Lord, never to shame. I'll never forsake. What a privilege it is to come to the Lord in prayer, that He allows men and women like us, that He calls sons and daughters, to come before the Most High with the opportunity to bring our prayers to Him. And what a wonderful foundation we have in God's Word, that we can stand secure. But boy, this walk is difficult, isn't it? And we need His grace, and we need the hope that we find in Jesus Christ, and we need His truth to guide us as we walk with Him. So this last song, we pray for just a closer walk with Jesus. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk, let me walk close to thee. Just a closer walk with thee. Granted, Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to thee.
Well, thanks again to the Orchard Bluegrass Praise Ensemble for their wonderful music here this morning. We're very blessed that they could join us here today. I really wanted the opportunity to introduce our main speaker today because he holds a very unique distinction, that being the only bigger Chicago Cubs fan in the room than me. When you talk about selfless service to others, Bill Kmiecik and his wife Betsy are two shining examples. Bill is the founder and retired president of Wisdom Investments, a boutique fee-only financial planning, investment management, and tax firm. Bill's career also traversed corporate America as a tax and finance professional, an internal revenue agent, and an adjunct professor of accounting and finance classes at Harper College, and in the MBA program at Northern Illinois University. Bill and Betsy were married at First Pres Church here in Arlington Heights in 1980, and subsequently moved to town in 1985. Along with their two children, Brian and Emily, they lived in Arlington Heights until 2019, when they downsized to a town in a neighboring community. I won't name it. Bill and Betsy attended Willow Creek Community Church for over 30 years, where Bill was active in the stewardship ministry, the Good Sense leadership team, and the Willow Creek Northwest Men's Breakfast. Bill and Betsy are currently attending the Bridge, Randhurst campus in Mount Prospect. Bill has been active in Rotary for over 16 years and currently serves as the district governor for Rotary District 6440, which is part of Rotary International, serving northeastern Illinois. For those of you who don't know, Rotary International is a worldwide network of inspired individuals who see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in communities and in themselves. Bill has titled his message this morning, Imagine, and so I'm really looking forward to hearing what Bill has to say. Please join me in welcoming our main speaker this morning, Bill Kmiecik.
Well, good morning, everybody. Just a short message to Arlene. I'm kind of partial to white hair, so. Well, my story starts in 1962. I was an 8-year-old boy living in a 2-story gravestone on Logan Boulevard in the Logan Square area in Chicago. My cousin and my best friend Joey lived upstairs in the 2-story. We lived downstairs. And along with Carl, who was another one of our friends who lived across the alley, the three of us did everything together. We played together, we went to school together, and we went to church together. In fact, on May 20th, 1962, we were scheduled to make our first Holy Communion together. We attended a church called the St. Hedwig's Mission Church, which was a satellite church of a large Polish cathedral church called St. Hedwig's, which was located in the Bucktown area of Chicago. The cathedral, the mission church was started in 1939 and was intended for people who were members of the St. Hedwig Church but lived west of Western Avenue, too far to be able to walk to the main church. There weren't a whole lot of people that went to this church. In fact, when we were making our communion, I'm pretty sure that Joey and Carl and I were the only ones that were making our communion that day. Well, about a week before we were supposed to make our communion, the priest that's at the St. Hedwig's big church called the priest at the mission church and indicated that 2 days after we were going to make our communion, there were some openings for a confirmation ceremony they were having. And he wanted to know if there was anybody at the mission church that was ready to make their confirmation. Well, the priest talked to our parents and told them this was an opportunity that I don't think you can pass up. So 2 days after we made our communion, without any formal training or anything, Joey and Carl and I were going to make our confirmation. So on the night of May 22nd, 1962, Joey and Carl and I went to this big cathedral-style church, and they put us in the first pew right in front of the altar. Now, if anybody, some of you were around in 1962, you may remember that at that point, the Mass was in Latin. In addition to that, the priest had his back to the parishioners. He faced the front of the church. What we did what any normal 8-year-old boys would do in a situation where you're in a big church and you're in a large pew and you didn't understand what was going on. We goofed around. We squirted back and forth along the pew. We poked each other. We laughed. Every time we started making some noise, the priest would turn around and he'd give us the stink eye, and we would stop. That went on for most of the whole ceremony. But eventually the ceremony ended, and I'm pretty sure we were confirmed. I don't have anything to prove that, but I was never confirmed after that, so I'll tell, I tell you that story because 48 years later, I sat in that same pew for the funeral of one of my 14 aunts and uncles. I was a pallbearer, and I sat in that first pew with some different cousins at the time. The Mass was different. It was in English, and the priest faced us as opposed to us seeing his back. And I never once got the stink eye. But if the priest had looked at me, he might have given me the stink eye because I was smiling the whole time because I couldn't help but think about that day back in May of 1962 when Joey Carl and I were just goofing around so much during that time when we made our confirmation. Now, I went to Catholic church all during grade school and all during high school. And when I went to college, I stopped going to Catholic church, much to the dismay of my mother. Every time I came home from college, my mother would tell me that Father Dowling was asking about me. I don't think Father Dowling ever asked about me, but I think that was my mother's way of telling me that she wanted me to go back to church. In 1977, I met a girl named Betsy, who a lot of you know. And in 1979, we decided to get married. In 1980, we got married at First Presbyterian Church in Arlington Heights. And a few years after that, we decided to have children. Whereas some people find it very easy to have children. In fact, I knew some people in college who had children without even trying. We had some difficulties. Now, at the time, I was working for a woman who had 2 adopted children. So we sat down and talked with her about the adoption process. And we wound up contacting Lutheran Social Services. And we talked with them about adopting a child. And they told us that the first thing you needed to do was to be certified or be qualified as a foster family. And in order to be a foster family, you had to go through a home study. We said, okay, we'll do that. So during the home study, they asked us for a recommendation from our priest or our pastor. And Betsy and I looked at one another and said, we don't go to church. But we said, if you give us a baby, we'll go to church. Well, they must have believed us because on November 24th, 1987, we drove to Peoria, Illinois to pick up our 10-day-old son, Brian. And then a few years later, we drove to the McHenry Hospital to pick up a 6-year-old girl named Emily. But a couple years after we picked up Brian, Betsy and I were talking and said, we haven't gone to church yet. We told them that we would go to church. We really should do something. So Betsy did some research, and she found something in the paper about a church called Willow Creek Community Church, which was a church that was for the unchurched. And we said, let's try that. So one Sunday, I got all dressed up, put my suit on, because that's what I used to wear to church when I went to church before. And Betsy had a dress on, and we went to Willow Creek. And we walked in, and I didn't see any crosses, and there was no holy water. It was just a big auditorium. In fact, the only other person that had a suit on was Bill Hybels, who was the pastor at the time. It was very, very different. And I remember the service like it was yesterday. It started with some non-Christian jazz music, and then there was a skit. And the skit was about a young couple who were very happy, and then they weren't very happy. And they decided to get married. And after they got married, they were very, very happy for a while. And then they weren't happy anymore. So they went out and bought a car. And then they were happy again for a short while. And then they weren't happy. So they went and bought a house. And then they were happy again. And then they weren't happy. So then they decided to have kids. And they were happy again. And the skit just kept going on like that. After that, after the skit, there was some announcements, and then the message was about materialism. That really rang true with me. Now, I've never been a very materialistic person. In fact, I would call myself a fiscal conservative, which is a politically correct term for being a cheapskate. I mean, I really don't spend a lot of money. But I knew at that point something was missing from my life. I mean, I was a very happily married person. I had a son. That was a great thing to me. I grew up with 4 sisters. And I was never the pride of the family. I was always number 5 on the list. I mean, and if anybody doesn't believe me, talk to Betsy. She'll confirm that. We lived in a nice house. It was the nicest house we had ever lived in, that I'd ever lived in. We had 2 nice cars. I had a great job. I was making more money than I had ever made before, more money than I ever thought I'd make. But to me, it seemed like there needed to be more. We left the service that day, and we went back the next week. And we went back the week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that. We kept going back for 30 years. We missed some weeks when we were on vacation, but for the most part, we never missed. About a year after we started going, we started participating in the new communities part of Willow Creek, which was a service that they had during the week for people who were considered more mature Christians. What started out as a fulfillment of a commitment that we had made to Lutheran Social Services to give us a baby was really an answer to a call from God that we go back to church. And our activity, our going to Willow was really the start of the volunteerism that Betsy and I got involved in. After we started at Willow, we both got involved in various different ministries. I got involved pretty quickly in the guest ministry, which was a fancy term that Willow used for ushers. Betsy got involved in the junior high ministry, first taking attendance of kids that were coming, and then eventually leading a group of junior high students in their journey toward Christ. As the years went on, we got more and more involved in other ministries. We took leadership positions in those ministries. One of the last positions I was in was a member of the Good Sense leadership team, which provided direction for the stewardship ministry at Willow. That was about 8 people. My role was to develop and teach classes on the biblical concepts of money and budgets and investments. I did that for a long time until some guy, you might have heard of him, named Dave Ramsey came along and kind of put me out of business. Eventually, our volunteering led us back to Arlington Heights. In 2006, Betsy was the president of the Arlington Heights Chamber of Commerce. And one day, I was helping her out at the main event. The Chamber of Commerce had a booth at the main event or a table or whatever, and I was helping her pass out literature. And a very distinguished gentleman by the name of Lynn Jensen came up to me and said, "How come you're not in Rotary?" And I looked at him and I said, "I don't know what Rotary is." And he said, "Well, why don't you come to a meeting?" So I went to a meeting and I wound up joining Rotary. And a few months after that, because I was a pretty new guy in Rotary, I wound up leading a small group of Rotarians who were looking for people to give us $30 for the privilege of putting on a Santa Claus suit and running through the streets of Arlington Heights in December for something called the Rotary Santa Run. The morning of the first Santa Run, I woke up and I looked out the window and there was 6 inches of snow on the ground. I almost started crying. I thought we had spent well over $20,000 to prepare for this run, and I thought that it's not going to happen because of the snow. Well, I got dressed and I went to South Middle School, which is where the run was starting, and much to my pleasure, I noticed that the village of Arlington Heights had, I don't know what time they got up, but they had the route for the whole run plowed, everything was cleaned. A few hours later, there was no crying to be had because we had over 500 runners that year. We had only expected about 250. In fact, we had so many runners, we ran out of bibs, which was the numbers that the people wear. The race was a big success, and we broke even. So that was a very great thing. Now, Betsy didn't join Rotary until many years after that, but that didn't mean she wasn't involved in Rotary. She just didn't go to the meetings. Every time I volunteered, she was right there next to me. She was very, very involved in Rotary all the time. And in 2014, Betsy retired, and that's when retired from the Daily Herald, where she worked for many years, and then her volunteerism really kicked in. Am I done? I'm not finished yet. So, or was that Betsy on the phone? So, in 2014, Betsy retired from the Daily Herald, and that's when her volunteerism really kicked in. As I indicated, she had been the president of the Chamber of Commerce. She was the president of the Historical Society in Arlington Heights, and she'd always also been the president of the Rotary Club of Arlington Heights. She was the creator of and the committee head of the Arlington Heights Festival of Wreaths in 2016 and 17. She was a founding member of the Arlington Heights Memorial Library Foundation, and she's currently a board member of the Metropolis Performing Arts Center. Last year, Betsy was the recipient of a Heart of Gold from Arlington Heights for her volunteerism and many volunteer roles in Arlington Heights. Now, ironically, Betsy wasn't able to be here to accept that Heart of Gold award because we were in Guatemala volunteering at a school damaged by the Fuego volcano in 2018. Because of COVID, people were not able to get to this school and help make some of the improvements that were needed until last year. Betsy can't be with us here today because somebody has to be in Florida to watch that sun to make sure it doesn't get too hot. But she's still volunteering. This Saturday, she'll be serving beer at one of the Rotary clubs in Florida. It's chili cook-off that's going to happen. So, now, Betsy and I have had the opportunity, and I really do mean the opportunity, to volunteer in many places and to meet many people who have much less than we do. We've served meals to homeless people in Chicago, in Arlington Heights. We've helped prepare Thanksgiving meals and holiday gifts. We've dug foundations for buildings in Peru for indigenous people who a couple years earlier had been living in tents. We've done improvements at schools in Guatemala and Africa. We've visited orphanages and dumps in places like Africa that would make your stomachs turn when you see how these kids live. And then we returned back to Arlington Heights and that other place that we live now, that Tom wouldn't mention, and are just so thankful that we are able to live in the places that we live. Every time we go someplace, one of the first things I do is just thank God for the fact that I live where I am and have what I have. Imagine what the world would be like if we all had the opportunity to see that type of thing. I'd like to tell you a story about a young man that I met in Africa. We were volunteering at a school to install an aquaponics system. And without going into a lot of details, an aquaponics system is basically a fish farm. It's a place where you raise fish. And the purpose of this fish farm was to allow for the children at this school to have some protein in their diet. They lived on a diet of tortillas and root vegetables. And this aquaponics system was going to provide a pound of fish every month for each child at the school. We would get to the school in the morning at probably 8 or 9 o'clock, and we'd work till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There was a young man who lived in the village who would come to help us every afternoon. He never was there in the morning. He only showed up in the afternoon. We couldn't communicate with the young man because he didn't speak English, and we didn't speak whatever language he spoke. But he was a lot of fun to have around. He liked Michael Jackson, so he knew some Michael Jackson songs, and he also did the moonwalk really well. And if I had a little time, I'd demonstrate the moonwalk for you, but I'm not going to. But he would help us dig holes and move equipment and things like that. He really was a lot of fun to have around. Well, after the project was over, it took us about a week to put in this system, we came back the last day to say goodbye to everybody and such. I noticed that while we were there that this young man wore flip-flops. And they weren't in real good shape. They just covered the balls of his feet. The heels were gone. They weren't real good. I had brought a pair of flip-flops with me to Africa that I had bought right before I left. I paid about $2 for them at Walmart, and they had a real thick sole to them. You know, the flip-flops are different. Some have thick soles, some have thin. These had very thick soles. So I brought these flip-flops with me in hopes that I would see this young man when we went to say our goodbyes. Well, I did see him, and I gave him the flip-flops. He smiled. I smiled. We fist bumped or shook hands, whatever we did, and he went off on his way. I went off on my way and said goodbye to whoever I needed to say goodbye to. And then I got on the bus to wait for the rest of the people that I was with to get on the bus. And I was sitting by the window waiting, and I noticed in the distance this young man was walking toward me, and he was carrying something. And the closer he got to me, the more I realized that he was carrying a chicken, and it was a live chicken. And he came up to the bus, and he tried to hand me this chicken. And at that point, I realized that I'd given this young man a gift. I'd given him a $2 pair of flip-flops. But that wasn't what he received. He received a brand new pair of dress shoes. And he was giving me a gift. He was giving me a gift of the Sunday dinner that his family might eat. Or perhaps it wasn't Sunday dinner. Perhaps it was his income source. Perhaps he had a few chickens like that laid eggs. And the reason that we never saw him in the morning was because he harvested those eggs, and he would sell them in the village, and that's how he's raised money for his family. I didn't take the chicken, but at that point I knew that I had made a difference in that young man's life. You know, I went to Africa on that trip to make a difference in the lives of the children at that school, to allow for them to have some protein in their diet, which was lacking protein. But I made a difference in that young man's life, and I didn't even consider when I was giving him those flip-flops. Now, I tell you that story not because I think we should all go to Africa. We don't need to go to Africa. We can do that right here in Arlington Heights. Our Rotary Club makes a difference in Arlington Heights every day. Last year, our Rotary Club went out and made it possible for some children in our area, in our northwest suburbs, to have eyeglasses. We went to schools and did eye tests and distributed eyeglasses to students whose parents didn't have the resources to be able to take those children to the doctor or buy eyeglasses for those children. We also do other things. We pack holiday dinners. We purchase gifts at holiday times. Last summer, we had several community gardens in which at the end of the summer, we harvested vegetables every week. And we took those vegetables to the food pantry so that the people who came to the food pantry who were in need could get a can of beans and a bag of rice and some fresh vegetables for their families. But I don't tell you that because I want you to join the Rotary Club. If you want to join the Rotary Club, we meet today, 12 o'clock, Palm Court. But there's lots of needs in Arlington Heights that could be met. Arlington Cares is an organization that helps people who are experiencing short-term economic needs. They're always looking for volunteers. There are several churches in this area that have PADS programs. We have volunteered at these PADS programs, helping to prepare meals and clean up meals. The PADS program provide a place for people to take showers that need showers. There's always a place to volunteer at that. There's an organization in Arlington Heights called Connections to Care. And Connections to Care provides transportation for elderly people to get back and forth to their doctor's appointments if they're unable to do that themselves. Now, I could go on, but I'd ask for you, if you're interested in volunteering, just Google volunteer opportunities in Arlington Heights. There's lots and lots of volunteer opportunities in Arlington Heights. Now, I'd like to tell you one more story. And it's a story that's found in the New Testament in Matthew chapter 25. And I'm going to paraphrase this story in order to be brief. And this story is about a story in which Jesus is talking to the disciples. And he's telling them that when he returns, that he's going to sit on his throne, and he's going to separate people just like shepherds separate sheep and goats. He's going to separate people into people on his right and people on his left. And to the people on his right, he's going to say, good job. He's going to say, good job. He said, when I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. And when I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was a stranger, you invited me in. And when I needed clothes, you clothed me. When I was sick, you looked after me. And those people on the right are going to look at him and they're going to say, we don't remember doing that. When did we ever do that for you? And Jesus is going to reply, whenever you did that for the least of my brothers or sisters, you did that for me. And then he's going to look at the people on the left. And he's going to say, shame on you. He's going to say, when I was hungry, you gave me nothing. When I was thirsty, you gave me nothing. When I was a stranger, you ignored me. And when I needed clothes, you gave me nothing. And the people on the left are going to say, we don't even remember seeing you. When did that happen? And Jesus will reply, what you did not do for the least of my brothers and sisters, you did not do for me. Now, I'd like to go back to that story that I told you about the 8-year-old boy in the big Polish cathedral church called St. Edwig's, and say that the next day, I had a lot of remorse about all that goofing around that I did, and I had an epiphany and said, I'm going to devote my life to the service of people. But that would be a lie, because that didn't happen. It took me years before I concluded and knew what was missing from my life and realized that I needed to give back. But imagine what our lives would be like if every 8-year-old boy or girl, or every 10-year-old boy or girl, or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50-year-old boy or girl, or man or woman, were to volunteer a portion of their life to helping people who weren't as fortunate as they are. You know, when you leave here today, if you have a computer, and I think most of us have a computer, go to YouTube, search for the song Imagine by John Lennon and listen to it. I think John was onto something when he wrote that song. Thank you for having me today. May you have a blessed day.
Thank you, Bill. At this time, I'd like to ask Rick Koebernick to come and lead us in our closing prayer to finish our program. Rick?
Just want to say thank you for having me here today, Tom. Just shocked that you called me. Not a good speaker in public, and I warned you I will stammer through this, but thanks, Bill, for everything and plugging Rotary. I am the president of Rotary, so if you would like to join our club, come see me. I'm going to go there. Let's take and bow our heads in prayer. Dear Father in heaven, thank you for Tom and all of our community leaders. Please be with them as they navigate through the upcoming challenges and needs of our community. Please help them to be good leaders and stewards of our community. Give them the wisdom to use their knowledge to make sound decisions. Provide them with good counsel to guide them through difficult times. And most importantly, let them see Jesus as a role model, the one who just spoke the truth even when the truth was not wanted. We pray this all in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Well, I'm with the Arlington Heights Chamber. If anybody would like to join the chamber, we're also, just want to say, we have volunteer opportunities as well. But no, the message this morning is make sure through your faith and what you believe and through your prayers, you're helping others. Make sure you're volunteering. There's lots of opportunities, like Bill said. Continue to push our next generation into leadership. They need the mentoring. They need the opportunities. My wife and I are very happy. 2 out of 4 of our kids are off our payroll. There's a lot of happiness there. But make sure that you're in the community. It's a great community to be a part of, and look at the leaders that you heard from today. Follow the example and get involved. And most of all, have a blessed day. Thank you for being here.